songwriter.
The photo is aging, droplets of sudden red.
Producer. Composer. Band leader. Recording studio honcho. And the founder of Create Interesting Music, which is a mentorship program which helps creative guitarists develop into full-fledged artists. I mean, I know that your time's pretty limited right now, but if you were to work on it, for example, for like an hour a day for a week, I think you would cover so much ground that you might not need to work on this again in the same way.
Gotcha.
For example. Yeah. Okay, so let's say that you use root 6 on, you use root 6 below, whatever. What we're learning to do in those cases is think across the fretboard, which can be very helpful. However, sometimes we want to move up and down the fretboard as well. And so there's actually, there's a video somewhere where I'm talking to my student Daniel about this, not only improvising in one position, but also trying to improvise in A major on the low E string, for example. I added another note there, but you know, so there's that. And you can do that on every string. You can just try to improvise in A major on the A string. On the D string. On the G string. And so basically, improvising on one string at a time, what it lets you do is really know how to move, you know, like across the fretboard, up and down. So yeah, and then improvising in positions lets you move across the fretboard. And so what happens as you get to know this stuff really well? Oh no, I think you're lagging. I'll wait until you're not lagging.
Oh no, I'm here.
Oh, you're good. Okay, cool. Yeah. So what happens as you get to know this stuff really well is that all of these things start to merge. And so it stops being about this position or that position and that stuff. I mean, it's helpful. For me, it was very helpful. It's like a way in. But what really happens is that you actually just know the fretboard and you don't have to think in terms of positions. You can move across strings. You can play big leaps. You can just visualize anywhere on the fretboard and know all of the notes that are in the key. And as you practice doing this stuff by improvising, you actually build up this sort of network of melodic ideas and tendencies that just happen from you improvising a lot. And so for every point on the fretboard, they're almost like these little like nodes that contain a bunch of like memory information. It's like when you play it, you know all these other notes that you can play after it, and you know what it's going to sound like because you've done it so much.
Okay, good. See, the point I'm trying to get to, and maybe I'm just verbalizing exactly what you just said in my own words. I'm trying to get to a point where I can scat something, and then I can play around those exact notes that I've just scattered. So that's what I'm trying to get to, like, and then like I can play that. So if this is the method to get to that, I'm excited, and I'm assuming that is the method to get to that.
It is, totally. And if you check out some of the stuff in phase 2, we really get to exactly that, connecting your instrument with your voice, training your ear. Yeah, because that's exactly where we want to be. And for me, it was so important when I was learning improvisation in a really kind of more serious way. Like when I first got to music school, this is really what we worked on. It was like connecting the guitar to the voice, connecting the voice to our ear, connecting the ear to the instrument. And so the guitar is really just like an extension of our sort of aural imagination. Right. So it's like if you can imagine a sound, you can play it. And so all of this fretboard stuff, the 6 positions, whatever, that's like the way to kind of remove the like, oh, I don't know this part of the fretboard so well, like from the equation. So you kind of get that all smoothed out. And then in phase 2, we're introducing a lot of just like ideas about aural training and connecting your voice to the instrument and being able to, yeah, really like build that connection. And that's ongoing. That's kind of what the whole program is about.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, fantastic. So I'll continue with that. Now, in terms of practicing properly for an hour,
Yeah.
can I grab you for the next 5 minutes so to like kind of tell me how do I know I just realized that whenever I grab the guitar and I'm like noodling around or whatever, I'm
Hmm.
practicing scales, I may not be doing it properly,
Yeah.
like actually practicing properly. So if I'm sitting down for an hour, I have an hour, how should I think about actually doing a proper practice?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so something that's going to be super useful is logging what you're working on.
Okay.
And recently I've been experimenting with using ChatGPT as like a log because it's like it's if I'm gonna write it out by hand, it's like that just it's like an extra step, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been a helpful tool. Yeah, and then I'd say structure what you're doing as carefully as possible so that you're not just like noodling. Because there's like I think there are different things that, you know, there's noodling, there's writing, and then there's like, you know, there are a lot of other things, but there's also practicing. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
what practicing is, or at least what good practicing is, or what focused practicing is setting a very clear and achievable goal that you're going to reach by doing a set of things that you are in control of that will help you get there. And so,
Mm-hmm.
for example, what I'm recommending here with practicing this position, improvising over these chords for this much time, that's like a very specific dialed in thing that allows you to be kind of empirical. And so you
Mm-hmm.
can be like, I worked on it for this much time and I saw this much improvement. And now I can see that, you know, like, but the B string is still confusing to me. And that's because I focused
Right.
on these other strings, for example. And so that's how you can start to, yeah, just really be intentional with the goals that you're setting.
Okay.
And there's for now I think they're like small goals, but the thing is that if you're practicing the right way, then after you work on something for a little while, you stop needing to work on it because you know it. And so it's like breaking the
Gotcha.
things that are like the building blocks into the small exercises that are going to help you get there. And then something that's really important to me is finding ways to do it that are still creativity oriented and discovery oriented. And so that's where improvisation really comes in. And with all of this, you're with improvisation,
Gotcha.
you're learning to think on your feet. Basically, you're learning to create in real time. So I think
Right.
it's so much better than learning. Like I'm not really a fan of like licks, for example. I think it's like so much better than licks because you're building your own melodic approach, and that means that everything you discover can transfer over to writing if you want, you know, or to jamming with people. Yeah, and so does that make sense about setting very clear and achievable goals, and then like measuring the amount of time that you're spending working on them to achieve those goals?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One more question on that.
Yeah.
So like when you're doing exercises, you got like your weight and the number of reps. So in this place, in this particular case, would be like the position or whatever you're doing, and then like the amount of, not the amount of time, but like how slow you might be doing it, or how specific framework that you might be doing it. So question there is, at what point should I be increasing speed of the
Yeah,
practice,
yeah. Okay.
of that specific thing?
Yeah. So, for one thing, this does get talked about a bit in phase one.
Okay.
So I do, yeah. So I map out a lot of this stuff pretty
Yeah.
carefully. But yeah. So there's just more resources there, and also tonight from 6 to 8, I'm around and super down to talk about it more. If you have the availability to stop by, no worries if not. But so
I'm
with
like, sure I
speed,
do.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
all good. So what I'd recommend doing is saying I'm going to work on this, for example, let's say half an hour, and I'm going to work on just
Mm.
A major 7 going to D major 7. I'm going to say A major root 6 on. It could be another position. It could be improvising on one string. It could be improvising on two strings. There are all kinds of cool ways to do it, and all that stuff is really talked about in the course materials and in conversations with past students and stuff. So basically, you set some specific goal. What I recommend doing is like I use a lot of timers, and so like
Mm.
every 5 minutes, bump up the tempo. And so you can bump it
Mm.
up by 3 BPM. You can bump it up by 5 BPM. What I recommend doing as far as increasing the tempo is having it feel like it's increasing on a gradient so that you're slowly, like by the time that you're playing really fast, you've practiced at pretty much every tempo. I mean, even if you're jumping in groups of 3 or 5, that's like functionally pretty much every tempo, so that
Yeah.
you're not going from like I can do it at 60, but when I jump to 160, I can't do it. It's like by putting it on a gradient, you might realize, oh, I'm running into a specific block at like 95 beats per minute.
Right.
And once that stuff becomes clear and we're being empirical about it, there are a lot of ways that we can solve those problems. Like, I know you've got to go in 1 second, but I'll just say two big speed blocks that I had were playing 16th
I,
notes.
I can still hear you. I think the video. Okay, cool. Yeah, keep going.
Cool. Okay, yeah. So I'll just keep it super brief. The two speed
Yeah.
blocks that I had were when I was like 18 or 19 playing 16th notes at quarter equals 116. For some reason, I just couldn't get past that unless I was
Mm,
only doing like left hand stuff. My right hand could never get past that.
mm,
And then later, I realized that there was another speed block for me when I was playing, I believe, triplets between quarter equals 150 and quarter
mm,
equals like 160 to 180 with jazz
mm.
stuff. And there's a lot of stuff in phase one about my experience of getting through, especially that second block. But if I was just playing at 120 and I tried to jump to 200, I'd be like, I can't do it. Because I couldn't. I couldn't make that leap. But by slowing up gradually, I could identify some very specific challenges. And what's really cool is that when these challenges get very specific, they're very achievable. And there's nothing that's like magical about them. It just becomes why, like, what is the thing that I'm missing to get me through here? And the good news is that like I've been through all of this and I've helped a lot of people at this point work through this stuff. And
Right.
so I'm available. So if you can identify any specific block and you have questions about it, super down to talk about it. And I'll probably have like 5 exercises that I can recommend that will help. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
awesome.
Okay.
All right, I
So
know
I'll
you've got
work.
this meeting.
So on my docket is to work on this, and report back to you when I hit a block.
Awesome. All right, yeah. Talk to you soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cole. Thank you for taking
No
the time.
problem. Yeah, for sure.
With something like guitar lessons, like I want to play that Robert Fripp solo, or like this is the sound I'm going for, versus with this class, it's more about finding your sound, which I think is extremely important if you're trying to create like meaningful music that connects with people, but also with yourself. Like none of us are blank slates. Everybody coming into this course identifies in some way or another as an artist or a musician who, again, hasn't necessarily unlocked what they want to unlock.
I'm currently opening up a limited number of 45-minute strategy calls. On the calls, we're going to 1, get serious about your goals, 2, identify what's holding you back, and 3, make a roadmap together for how you can move forward and really achieve those goals. And after that, if it's a fit, we'll talk about working together. So if you're ready to grow as a guitarist, as an artist, and maybe even as a human being, there should be a little button below where you can click to book a time. So bring your story and we'll do the rest together. See you soon.